So Win,
Yes.
I've got some news. I finished hardcover volume 1 of East of West. And I thought to myself, well, now is the perfect time to take home a hardcover volume 2, right?
Yes.
Loving it. Didn't take it in before. Ordered one for myself. Left it in the store forever. Turns out we sold all 7 copies we'd ever ordered. And now it's a $150 book.
Oof.
And Big Jeff wants his hardcover volume 2 because he's got hardcover volume 1 and number 3 is not out yet. And compulsive collector Jeff is just kind of losing it. This is like what happened with my Hickman Fantastic Four omnibuses that are we had a customer spend $1,000 getting the 2 Fantastic Four omnibuses after they'd gone out of print, which is crazy.
They'll come back in print, right?
They haven't yet.
But okay. Whatever.
Dear Jonathan Hickman.
Yeah. Well,
please put volume 2 or hardcover volume 2 back in print so that Jeff can have a copy.
Yeah, we do
3 Jeffs.
Yeah.
Hardcover copy.
But we do fortunately know, at least at this point now, the people between Marvel and Image that we can complain to about which omnibuses are not in print. The Marvel guy, actually, like when we met him at Comics Pro last year, I said, like, dude, why there's always these omnibuses I want in print that I can't get? And he's like, well, what are they? And then I froze and I was like, if anyone else wants to ask,
I was complaining, but I wasn't ready to give you specific volumes.
It was, yeah, exactly that. But it was very traumatic for my social anxiety. But it all worked out. He probably respects me as a clear inferior, but someone who's, in the pool, at least in the pool with his,
I think you're taller than him. It's probably fine.
That's true.
But yeah, I was having that thought earlier today because I was like, oh man, what if we managed to keep this going long enough to get to volume 7, which is not in hardcover.
But volume 3 hardcover is at least a product on Diamond. It doesn't have a cover yet, and it doesn't have a release date, but it's loaded in there. It's coming down the pipes.
Yeah,
it's a thing that we'll get.
But I can't wait for the volume 3 hardcover if we, beat it out. Oh, that was bad phrasing.
Yeah, when if you can actually, this is
to volume 7 before it releases.
Yeah, that's true. We're conceivably only like 4 or 5 weeks away from that. So when I have a feeling you might need a paperback volume 6 to just tide you over.
I'll read it to you over video chat.
If you're gonna commit to the hardcover, we'll loan you the paperbacks to read in the meantime.
There you go.
That's overly kind of you.
Because listen, once I read one of these paperbacks, it is far too dirty to sell to anybody because they're white.
It's almost as gross as Wynn's comment.
Oh gosh. All right, welcome to the Comics Place Book Club.
Book Club!
Woo! Volume 3.
Embrace nihilism.
Embrace nihilism. I wonder if I still have my shirt. It's probably thrashed, but...
Man, I thought she said reverse nihilism, which I also like.
Believe in reverse nihilism.
Materialism?
Yeah.
Everybody, we did it. It's been 2 weeks, and look it, we're all back.
I even finished volume 3 before, in the nick of time.
Fantastic.
I did my job. I did my homework, Jeff.
Yeah, I did have to almost force him out of the comic shop earlier today to make sure he would finish reading it.
I did another thing today at Jeff's specific request. I made beats from beats that Jeff brought me.
It looks like you kept the skin on too.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, exactly. I ate him with the skin on too.
Beets.
Yeah, I dropped off a bag of beets at his house like 2 days ago.
I wish that I had some orange juice concentrate.
Oh, yeah. Beets drop. Absolutely. Yeah, the beet drop. Mike, well done. Well done. Sorry I wasn't there for that one. That's
definitely a way better beet comment than what I made. So.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yours was the worst vegetable beet joke in history. All right, everybody. Jonathan Hickman, Nick Dragata, Volume 3, East of West, issues 11 through 15. I don't want to jump the gun, everyone, but I think my favorite volume so far, and by think I loved it. Aside from the really good part of volume 1, this whole volume, I don't know if it was in juxtaposition with everything else I've done this week, or that like it was just kind of the exact opposite of Middle West. But like just from the first couple of pages, I was so on board and in love with this arc and this volume.
I think Middle West did rejuvenate me to reappreciate this.
Oh yeah,
Just
I mean,
contrast.
Yeah, sometimes you
And
gotta.
I liked Middle West, but you know, when you go further away from something, a little absence makes the heart grow fonder type of stuff here. You know?
I think it was that. Yeah,
And you have like Middle West was so much easier.
Yeah.
To get
Yeah,
through.
I guess I was hungry for work comics.
Yeah.
I'm curious, everyone. We took 2 weeks off. What was it like? How did everyone feel coming back to it?
Great.
Good.
I had the Django style of rereading it, in which I finished it about a half hour before now.
Haha.
It was
I-
much easier for me to read.
Really? Then like volumes 1 and 2?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, 2 got easier than 1.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, I think the first ones, it took me a week to get through each one of them for various reasons. And this one, I kind of couldn't put it down. And I think I was done with it in like 3 days instead of the week that it's taken me. So I was finished with this by like, I think you guys delivered it to me on like Sunday or Monday, and I was done with it by Wednesday.
Nice.
And I was able to actually catch up on other stuff, whereas the first 2 volumes kind of took me time. Maybe it was just too meaty, but I kind of flew through it, especially the second half. Maybe after like, I don't remember what issue it is, but the second book in it, I think after I got through that, the rest of it, I just flew through it.
Yeah, I had this
Super fast.
weird feeling like the halfway mark through volume 3. I was just like, this doesn't feel much like work at like it feels like we did a lot of work setting up pieces, and now it's
Mhm.
just kind of letting like it's there was a lot more effortless plot in this one.
You know,
There were
Awesome.
big time payoffs in it, and things that we've been waiting to hear about, like the kid, the beast,
And a balloon.
oh
Which was some of the
gosh.
best stuff in the book.
Yeah.
And like we got to see all of them sitting down together, and that like what was that, like X-Force number 8 or something, where they did that, where Charles and Magneto sat around, like that happened in this, which was so
the
great.
big conference between all the nations.
Yes.
That was
That was a really
and we've
good...
been waiting for that. It felt like, okay, now we get that, and we get to hear more about the Endless Nation, and we get a real shakeup of murders, and I don't know, just
And some awful puns right after those murders.
that's true.
That shot of the room where when they walk away and there's, you know, the 3 or 4 people lying dead in
Yes.
the room was a fantastic shot.
That Django and I
Oh.
try not to talk about this stuff much before recording, but he did say in the time that we spent together today, the best part of comics he's had since quarantine was the shot of that table. Or actually, he said specifically, to speak for Django, he said specifically that their force fields broke part of the table. Like had the perfect
yeah, and
whoa.
out of the table.
yeah, dude. And to me, that table suddenly looks more like a Hickman diagram with those chunks.
Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I
I just,
even went back to find the moment that they activated their force fields to see what happened to the table.
Do you think that they activated their force fields, or do you think the force fields are just like things that they can keep out of their mind, and if any damage approaches them,
Huh.
it just activates?
Is there a difference?
Well, one requires
well,
cognition, right? One
yeah.
requires a nanosecond of brain processing to know that a body is exploding next to them.
It's like
I
a
would-
motion
yeah.
sensor versus
I
a
would say that
switch,
at
technically.
least the shaman has sort of, you know, conjoined his consciousness with a greater network of machinery.
Mhm.
But
That's true. That's true. Is their consciousness at all separate from the machinery? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
We don't know much about their tech yet, right? I mean,
other than it looks awesome. Like
coloring is
Yeah.
great, Mr. Frank Martin. Like that, the contrast that we've seen, that we've been into the first couple books, I think got even better with the introduction of the Endless Nation.
right,
detail.
and the fact that the first Native American character that we meet is not that is much more what we
Oh, yeah.
would traditionally consider a kind of Native American shaman character.
do you
this,
mean
this guy?
Wolf and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Right. The fact that he looks so different, and that's we see him and Wolf, but now seeing the actual people who represent the Endless Nation, and how they have this modern look, the suits, but married with this techno native design.
Flying cubes.
Flying cubes, but like the gold,
Right.
the gold cybernetic headdresses, and there's a strong like Aztec Incan vibe to a lot of it as well.
Yeah.
Well, and he's got what looks pretty similar to the balloon.
Yeah,
Right?
I realized that today actually.
Floating computers.
Yeah, the you know, Babylon's balloon, baby Babylon's balloon, the baby boy Babylon balloon,
little baby
Definitely not a coincidence.
also is the beast baby Babylon balloon.
Baby B
is. Do we know that that kid is a boy?
No.
Son.
I mean, they keep calling Babylon the sun.
They do, and
yeah,
like the thing that confuses me about that is that he's referred to as the chalice of a chalice, and a chalice usually refers to a woman, right?
You could be trans.
Sure.
But
both of those.
But don't Death and Xiaolin both refer to him as their son?
They do keep saying son, but again, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, just it like the message doesn't seem to line up with the messaging in that.
Yeah. Famine says what happened to the boy on this page. Masculine nouns tend to be used.
So right off the bat, question. So Xiaolin had called everyone together. Like we start with Xiaolin, and when we get to the table, they ask, "Why did you bring us here?" And she says, "War." Do we know what her explicit like reason for bringing everyone together was? So she identified that the president was like part of this chosen crew. Was it that Xiaolin had identified that there is a group called the Chosen, and they are, some of them are in the group and some of them are out of the group, but they have a plan that's working against their own, and was that the motivation? And then was the numbers that they were processing, like the shaman when it said was like predicting battle outcomes and whatnot, was that, I guess I was a little confused. I was understanding everything that was going on, but I was having a hard time remembering what the initial motivations for getting to that table would have been.
I think her motivations on setting up the meeting and making these kind of accusations was a sort of shaking the jar and shaking everybody up so that the Chosen would reveal themselves to some degree, or would turn on each other, or just to see what would happen, because she knew something would happen.
Yeah, she's just screwing with stuff to a certain extent, I think, and letting it play out. And I do think she understands that by bringing up the idea of war, she is leading towards inciting it, and it probably is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy there, I guess.
And also there's the fact that she did just kill her father and take over his regime. So a great way to instill loyalty is to lead people into battle.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think of like when the numbers were being crunched about who was sort of on what sides and if who held together. That statement to me had some confusion for me of like, okay, wait, why are we already pushing an idea of who would be on what side? Because it seemed like it immediately followed her just being like, I think President Lady is part of a separate crew. And it was like, well, if these two band together, anyway, there was, I guess there was a lot of things in here that I enjoyed as being things that I felt were like more open to interpretation, as opposed to feeling like I was missing something. If that makes like the shot of Bell when the like worm thing is on him and he takes the shot, and I was like, okay, does no one else sees it? Like that it was physically drawn, but it was probably his perception of feeling forced to take that shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would choose to interpret that as what is happening
internally.
In the Deadlands, in the spirit realm, essentially.
He knows something about Deadlands.
I was,
but yeah,
it reminded me a lot of the whole Charles Xavier Cassandra Nova, like first couple issues of Grant Morrison's X-Men, where he puts the gun to his head because he's worried that if something got to him, that it could cause more damage than So because I can imagine that Bell Solomon seems like a pretty tough dude.
Right. But he's forced to kill somebody in it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's, and then finally, the other thing I was very eager to hear everyone's feedback on was just the whole kind of conversation about the Deadlands with Wolf and his father, and kind of that idea of an exchange and what it exactly meant and what the implications moving forward were.
That was the part I understood the least, personally.
Right. So, again, so specifically from experience with the Deadlands, the role-playing game, that's a basic principle of kind of spiritual exchange, that in order to get spirits from the Deadlands to agree to do anything, there needs to be tit for tat. There's spiritual equivalent exchange. And the promise of Wolf's skin in the future, because what he's summoned now is essentially a skinwalker, a spirit bound into the physical form of his father. And he's basically offered the body, but bound him to it at the same time, or bound it, the spirit, to it at the same time, but has also promised his own skin should he follow in his father's footsteps in becoming basically a magician, in the way that the Endless Nations very much frowns upon. And
is that you giving your best guess, or is that just like because you kind of know what you're talking about more in that you're like, no, I think that is just what happened? Which
column A, column B. That's
Okay.
what I'm putting
Alright.
together from the conversation between Wolf and the spirit that comes and almost destroys them. Mixed with what I understand of how a sort of general Native American spiritualism that kind of functions, that spirits want tribute, they want offerings in order to do anything for a shaman or wizard.
Man, that is like the first instance of like, I'm like, dang, this really feels like if I had any awareness of this game Deadlands, I would have a leg up on this. Like you had said that in volume 1, but here we are in volume 3, and it seems like the thrust of that game's influence on Hickman is like, he probably had to have played that game at some point, it sounds like.
That was very much my first impression.
Yeah.
Because, from top to bottom, it's very much a sort of... Because Deadlands takes place in an alternate universe Wild West, like in the latter 19th century. So this is basically a good projection of what would happen, 150, 200 years after that.
Or is it that Hickman is being inspired by the source material that Deadlands was referencing? You know what I mean?
Could be that too, yeah.
Is there an inspiration for Deadlands?
The inspiration for Deadlands was literally just a picture of a zombie cowboy that one of the developers saw one day and went, yeah, I want to make a role-playing game of that.
Okay, well,
also, let's not give Hickman too much credit. That guy's got enough.
Does that help or hurt the story if you have something that obscure that you kind of need some of that background knowledge to get better enjoyment out of it? That's the one part of the book where I kind of felt like it was approaching like Matrix 2 architect level of confusion, where it's just like, okay, what's going on? Let's get to the next part, and then get to the next part, and it's back to the races again.
I bet that it comes back around and kind of explains it.
That was my thinking, is I left it feeling like, I think this will sort itself out.
It's pretty rare for Hickman to leave you. It's as common as it is for him to leave you hanging for a while. It's equally as rare for him to leave you hanging forever. I feel like it just takes a long time.
I really liked how they showed Colonel Sanders killing the president at his funeral. Like through the flashbacks.
Because at the meeting after everything kicks off, you just see that he's dead.
Right.
And it's confusing, and you think, oh, what happened? And you're flicking through the panels to kind of see, okay, did the blast hit him?
Exactly.
I did that same thing. Like, these trajectories don't match up.
Same.
It has a certain ring to it.
Yeah. And also right before that, there's the spooky assistant to the president, where they show her
Doma
hitting
Lux,
that dude the bomb. That was
seriously
awesome.
Great.
The page before we basically found out she was insane, I was like, dang, that girl's crazy. Like, she's kind of cool. And I looked up to be like, all right, I want to remember her name so I can talk about her when she comes up, because I thought it would still be an obscure reference. And then you flip a page or two and it's like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
You are making a statement here, young lady.
And you know that where he says the ring thing, what does he say? It has a certain ring to it.
Mm-hmm.
The table where he killed him is also a ring.
Oh.
And later on, they talk about time being some sort of ring as well. The beast Babylon says something about time being a ring when they're talking about the different ways that he can perceive time in his simulations.
So it's full of circles and cubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even just the way time progresses, it's a series of discs on top of each other, repeating the same thing. And actually, in Red Wing, Hickman described time the same way. There's like, it's a series of discs stacked on one another that are fulfilling the same thing over and over again. It's interesting to see a sort of internal continuity of just how Hickman views time, or you know,
dude loves hard drives.
He loves his concentric circles as well.
He do love those. I'm a triangle guy myself, but I like a circle as well.
So can I take a little bit of a Hickman tangent here?
Yeah.
So most of us have read House of X stuff, which, you know, they've got the Quiet Council, and then you've got this.
Yeah.
And I just started reading his Avengers, and you've got circled stuff throughout the first like 6 issues or so.
You're gonna love his Avengers run.
I'm so pumped. I like it's making me real happy so far. A question I have, this might just be pure speculation. It might be, I don't know. He references when in the first couple issues of the Avengers one, not New Avengers, but where they're on Mars with like Ex Nihilo and Abyss. The 2 animals that they said that lived in tandem there, I forget how they mentioned it, but some sort of symbiotic relationship, were like a dog and a bird, which very much could have been like a wolf and a crowish type thing. So I don't know if that's just like, oh, Hickman has 2 very clear favorite animals, or if there's some source material where those 2 animals have some sort of a relationship that I'm just not familiar with, and maybe that's supposed to mean something here.
There may be some sort of source material as well. My guess would almost just be that like he has some sort of internal metaphorical relationship between those 2 things. It's maybe being seen other places, but like Django knows from working with me, there's like 7 ideas. I'll kind of be like, oh yeah, it's like this, and it's like, you can't keep comparing everything to those 2 metaphors, Jeff. Like, that's not everything is that proportionally equivalent. You know, it's like maybe he has the same cognitive fallacy that I have, which is that everything can boil me down.
Like, I wonder what Hickman has against putting underwater creatures into his books.
I bet he hasn't even started to think about water politics, you know? Like, I'm sure he's like, that's a whole different series.
Lord save us from him ever writing Aquaman.
God, just because it would be Aquaman.
Excuse you.
I'm sorry. I'm just like, when was the last really good Aquaman book? Actually, the
Abnett was pretty good.
Yeah. Abnett is always good. He's
right,
always
fine. Let's hope he doesn't pick up Hawkman then. How's that?
So, same story. Hickman, Django at one point, I don't know if I've mentioned on these video calls or what, but he said, like, how do you think Hickman starts writing these stories? This is when we were talking about Decorum #1 on the podcast. And this volume to me became the sort of most evident that, like, I bet it was like this story to me with a bunch of Deadlands thrown in feels a lot like Hickman's brain just being like, what is a possible alternate timeline for America? And every different tribe seems to reflect a very internally consistent argument that he would have for how different people would do a thing. Like I think a lot of writers, when you're reading something, you can kind of see that it's like, oh, this is their take on if these people did this. And he doesn't seem to be able to do just like one thing. It's like, okay, he develops whole political and sociological ecosystems and then sort of evolves them in his head with how they relate to one another. And this one, that seems sort of the most evident with, but it seems like kind of the template for how you were talking about decorum, or a lot of his different stuff is just this very like systems buoyed by belief, and what are the potential for how they can interact with one another. I love it. Middle West was very good, but to like then come into this one and just be like, oh yeah, like I don't know why I like work comics, but I like work comics.
I think that's a very solid observation, because now I'm wondering if you can take, if you pick apart all of the different nations within East of West, ascribe them a personal philosophy that describes each one, and then try to equivocate them to the characters in Manhattan Projects.
Or yeah,
like would there be a correlation? Is there a nation that is Einstein? Is there a nation that is Oppenheimer? And so on.
And to me, like the most clear instances of his internal divide are his Reed Richards and his Doctor Doom, because like it's like the sort of boiling down a dichotomy as opposed to this one, which is like 6 different philosophies, whereas a lot of his Fantastic Four stuff kind of came down to like, you can view the world this way or this way. And if anyone hasn't read his Fantastic Four stuff and is enjoying this, I can't recommend it highly enough.
I think that part of what made this book go down a lot easier is that it's more based in kind of action and definitely moving things forward rather than setting it up. Almost every issue in this, even that political, like super political, let's sit down at a table and talk issue, is interrupted by action at some point, and it's been a real slow build to that, other than a couple of issues in the previous volume.
I wanted to talk about segueing into action. My favorite, I'm curious if it's your guys's or what your guys' favorite, but when the Texas Ranger guy, right after he takes his shot and talks about how no one else could have possibly made that shot, and then Death turns his revolver and takes that shot
without a dog scope.
Without a dog scope, he's just like, no one can make that shot, and then he just turns his revolver and hits him. It's fucking awesome.
Aiming from the hip, not even like.
I
thought you lead with that. I was angry. Yeah, I got that.
yeah. That I didn't get in volume 2 or whenever we met, Texas Ranger, Walker Texas Cyber Ranger. Django was like really cool guy, and I was like, yeah, I haven't gotten that yet. But in this volume, like the whole Death Walker Texas Cyber Ranger guy, Walker Texas RoboCop, that whole interplay was so good. Like just like the tacit respect between the two, and like the way they kind of stumbled upon the fact they're on the same side, even though they don't, like, just mwah.
It's like Star-Lord versus Clint Eastwood.
I was about to say it is simultaneously pure superhero comic and pure Western.
Yeah. It's really well done.
Slow and action, and the pacing works both ways. I love how it mirrored them, and it wasn't subtle, but it also wasn't indetectable. It was just fun seeing that conversation back and forth. We haven't really seen anyone like Death, who's the Clint Eastwoody character yet. Like I don't know. And now we just kind of have another version of that who can snarl along with him. Man, there was a lot of sneering, a lot more even.
And especially how they part as well. That they realize that it's all essentially a misunderstanding. They were both they're both working for their own purposes. They don't particularly care about each other's purposes, but
there's also a bit of next time I see you, I might kill you.
Right,
but in a sort of respectful way. Yeah.
You could try.
I love Walker Texas RoboCop's respect. Like he was like, "Oh God, I did mess that up for you." Well, my dog would probably sniff out, and then he solves the problem for him. It was a very cool.
I love that it was just bad luck. Like, shit, I shot him at exactly the wrong moment. Sorry, bro.
A thing that I liked as well was in that conversation at the end, the difference in relative perspective of their mounts. Like Death's mount is this big spindly thing, and Teenage Mutant Texas Rangers. One is like super low to the ground.
Phallic, just like small, long. Yeah, he sits in the back. Like,
yeah, it definitely looks like he bought his ride at that store around the corner from you guys.
Yeah, from Dominic Toretto. I had a very clear favorite part of this book that made me just grin for like 45 seconds.
What you got?
And I know Django loved it, even though we haven't talked about it yet. But this page reveal,
I stared at that for probably 3-4 minutes. I was horrified. I couldn't wait till we could get to this.
So disgusting and lovely.
All of it. All of that. Oh.
I watched The Exorcist the next night, and it didn't hold a candle to what I experienced the night before.
And the one page before, with the little kid eating the meat, that was real good too. Yeah, I like the horror elements in this issue even more than the other one. And later on, having Ezra separate from the monster that's on him, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Monster separate him from himself deliberately.
Yeah.
That's I loved all of the Ezra stuff in this.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I ordered both 3 and 4.
So you got the source book then?
Yes, I did. So and I got both of those, and I'm me, so I read both of them in like an hour. But I love where that is going as well, the Ezra stuff, and how it ties back in with the kind of nihilistic fatalism aspect that I discussed way back when, but with the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy that from now on, at the end there, all of the stuff that the Horsemen are doing is kind of flying in the face of what they think they should be doing in order to fulfill the apocalypse, but it's making it actually happen.
Yeah.
Both with the Beast and with Ezra.
The Ezra stuff is incredible. Just in volume 4, they put the single issue source book, The World, but they put it at the end of the first hardcover here. So in volume 3, and there's a bit about Ezra in that is, clearly he's a more powerful, important thing than the sad, emaciated body hanging off this weird tentacle thing seems like it will become.
He's just like a third nipple on this thing.
With just a hand way over here.
So everything here is taking place in our geographic America, right?
Yes.
North America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the world, which is the final chunk of the hardcover you have, Django, it has maps for every country.
Yeah, I had just enough time to flip through that. So what's happening in the rest of the world?
Right, I thought that same thing.
Yeah.
Shrug emoji.
Yeah.
Happening in the rest of the galaxy, may the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
Not my concern.
Yeah, ironic considering the issue that illustrates all of the American area is called The World, because it's clearly not the whole world. Yeah, okay. What is going on?
So, the very last panel is the Beast in a field of flowers, and the balloon is telling him that it's a wasteland full of skulls, right?
And then he'll never lie to him.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where when the Horsemen are on their way, the balloon shows him that they're big, scary bad guys, and it's really just the children versions of them.
Mm-hmm.
I interpreted that as the machine showing the boy
true form.
Yeah, true form.
Yeah, initially, until you get to that last page in the volume.
Yeah, and then you're like, this balloon is a mean balloon.
I read as soon as I saw that digitized image, I was like, something feels off. It looks kind of like a video game.
Doom.
I interpreted it the exact same way as you.
That's what that balloon is full of.
As soon as I read, I'll never lie to you, you're like, instantly, this guy's lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I loved with that as well, it sprung to mind when you're talking about how there's more action and in this volume. It felt refreshing when you get to the boy escaping, because that's finally someone showing like personal agency and freedom and liberation of themselves that seems to fit completely outside of all of these machinations and prophecies and the fatalism of everything.
Like,
so
not,
you really
maybe
root for him
not,
in that.
Yeah, maybe he's not beholden to the message.
Right, but then at the end you realize, oh no, he's still being deceived and led along a path that is not his own. And so that kind of rising of hope and then the sudden drop is very good.
I didn't realize that until you just said it, but you're right, that felt like the one moment where there was exactly that agency, like somebody acting outside of the message.
So do we have any idea who the balloon is working for?
Yeah, I was
Is the
gonna ask
balloon a
what
free
it's-
agent?
I have
Yeah,
that same
is it
question
aligned?
about Doma Lux as well. Who is she working for with? Is it
Mm.
maybe the same or different?
Somebody in Canada.
Because the president has a pretty clear surprised reaction when that one guy dies. So she wasn't expecting that. So her allegiances are somewhere else, elsewhere.
Yeah,
also.
you're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the narration seems to acknowledge Domo having an alternate allegiance. I'm trying to find the panel.
Yeah, I love that she is so, like, she's got such a small part. Like, she's not on that many pages, but she throws a big old wrench into things.
I loved
Oh,
that
you can
character.
tell-
Small
Very
enough to
memorable
fit down this
pages.
guy's throat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Down to her elbow.
Her character design is very subtly awesome too. I feel like we could have seen that coming. Just when you see, it's like when you see a famous actor in a movie like Knives Out. It's like, okay, Chris Evans is in this. So, like, that's awesome. And Daniel
She's
Craig's
also-
in this. It's gonna make sense, you know.
She's also drawn like 75% leg. Like the shot of her
Yeah.
shoving the thing down the throat. I was like,
Oh,
man, those physical proportions don't really
Yes.
make sense, but okay.
she must have had a cameo in Sailor Moon somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
so it's
course.
in issue 12, right after the guy's head explodes, and the president, she's saying, "You did this," and then the next row down is just Domo looking, very amused with blood all over her face, and the caption says, "No, she didn't."
Another good point. Yeah.
I really liked the, like, not to bounce around these issues a ton, but when we see the brother from the kingdom trying to get, like, worm his way into, just like his trickery and the way that he's going about getting any kind of respect or power from the king is pretty cool. And in that source book, it mentions that it is the Kingdom of New Orleans,
Yeah.
right? Which we
Yep.
talked about on the last episode of the book club.
And again, we're talking about writing and a lot of stuff. And I mean, we've touched on Degrada, but just like even down to this page of this like sweet Muay Thai move, like I really, I think because he's been so occupied with this series, he's an artist that is easy for me to overlook because I don't really see him and stuff aside from that Fantastic Four run. And I am loving this series, reading it. I am almost glad for his career that it's over so that he can kind of pursue other stuff because I'm really excited to see his work in other books.
He's so versatile, and like I want to give major props to him. On a single page, you have, like, there's coloring differences in this, so Frank Martin gets credit, but these two on the same page, going from, and this is like even way back to like Atlas, that guy at the beginning, just with the big old bugged out eyes, and then you have something that's basically more beautiful looking,
Bathed in white light.
Yeah, like that's, I don't know. I've been so impressed with that it gets to feel like there are so many different things going on in this book all the time, and it doesn't just, it's not static ever.
Like, it shouldn't run together as well, the detail variation, that there are characters that have barely any detail to them. They could be anime characters.
Yeah.
And then
Great
you
point.
have other characters and beings and buildings and landscapes that are just so full of organic detail.
The
And
landscapes.
they shouldn't run together as well. Like, going back to the design of what's her name?
Doma Lux.
Doma Lux. Yeah, she's like bare minimum. She's
Yep.
No line or detail at all. But you believe that they're all occupying the same world together. There's no clash there, and that's good.
Yeah.
And we already talked about this, but I think that this single page is like on the topic of comic booking in terms of like conveying story with single images. Like we spent 14 pages in this situation tracking all of this stuff, but this one static shot of the aftermath retells the entire story in a single image. It's like that is to me like just masterful comic book storytelling.
Like he's showing off that he just wrote a bottle episode and you didn't even know it because
Yeah,
it's so
that's
dynamic.
totally what it is. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I was just looking at it a little more, and like also just like sometimes he like it's so clear that he's having fun with the plot, because like in that same issue there's like this panel and the word balloon says treachery is a form of politics. I understand quite well as he's got his hand on the president's neck.
I know that was such a confusing panel, right? It was like there's a lot of different ways to
Then when you get later on and you realize what he's doing in that
Right.
moment, it's like, oh wow, that's wow.
I created a sort of long list of favorite moments, but I do sort of have a thought. I'm just curious on everyone's feelings of so I've been working at the shop for like 7 years, and throughout that time there's been tons of comics that have been coming out monthly through issues, and lots of things that I've read monthly sort of as they've been coming out when you worked at a shop, and this was one that like 5 issues in, so years ago, I was like, I just can't do this month to month, issue by issue. I need to read this in chunks at a time. And this is the first series in all of that time that I've actually done that with, like taken a long series that came out the entire time I was here and decided to like go from beginning to end. It's
What he's saying is that East of West wraps up. We're going to start Wicked and Divine.
I read more of Wicked
I
and
was
Divine than I
thinking
read of
just
this.
the same thing.
But
yes.
but like it's a byproduct of having the time to do it. I don't know that I would have gotten around to doing this for years if it weren't for this. But it just, I guess I don't know exactly what I want to say other than I don't know how well this book does work months between issues. And I love comics as a medium, but I wonder, is this the type of thing that should have been released once a year as a graphic novel? Like, are the limitations of the medium, like does the reach of what Hickman's trying to do here exceed its grasp? I'm curious how other people feel about that.
I'd like to get Joel O'Connor on here because he pushed this series on me when I first started working at the shop. He gave it to me for my birthday, and I felt the same way as you, but I think he's been reading it serially as each issue comes out.
It was definitely one that had a like very constant readership, but honestly, I can't think of anyone who actually read it per issue as it was coming out. Like they all were like, oh yeah, I'll get like, this volume worth of singles and then I'll read it all at once. Like it was very bingeable. Because I think we had like out of about almost 300 subscribers, we had maybe 6 or 7 people subscribe to the monthlies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that Wicked and Divine is a good comparison, actually, because that being a series that I did read every single issue as it came out, I think I would have felt similarly about East of West, which is that the individual issues would really stand out. Like the individual issue of that meeting would be a standout issue because it's just all it's a bottle episode, as you just said. So there are standout issues of Wicked and Divine. There are, they have from the cover to the story that's told within a single issue and the art within it. Each issue is an artifact that added together makes the whole story. Now, as you're reading it one at a time, you appreciate the individual issues, but you tend to lose track a bit of the overall story. So I think that would be my experience of reading East of West, just in individual issues.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I said in the beginning, like if I had started on single issues, I wouldn't have made it past the first one or second one.
Right.
But I
Or
think
I
by
would have let
volume,
them stack. There's no way I
yeah,
could have done it.
possibly.
Yeah.
But I think it would have just felt like too much work to wait a month to then kind of feel like I was lost again. But maybe I would have let them stack. But I'm always trying to pare down the stuff that I'm not reading immediately when I get it. But this volume, I feel like enough of the issues in it kind of stand alone, where maybe if I had read volume 1 and 2 and then started picking up issues, maybe it would have been a little bit more enticing. But I definitely would have been frustrated, like, at the end of volume 2 with Cheveo being shot and then having to wait a couple more issues to see.
Months.
That would have been frustrating, whereas I got to see it pretty quickly, reading it from volume 2 to volume 3. So that there would have been some frustrations for sure. But like Mike said, there's some standout stuff in here where a single issue would have, satisfied me enough for a while, probably.
There was so the Cheveo assassination and then months between it. It was Will, you maybe will also appreciate that when we got back to that scene, Hickman just reused the whole full page that had already been done, and I think he reused another one right after it or right before it.
It was
Yeah.
like almost the exact same 2 pages, yeah.
Which is the same thing he did with House of X and Powers of 10 with the scenes of Charles and Moira on the bench. And in the X-Men stuff, it almost could feel maybe a little bit self-indulgent or something. Like, we did just read that last week. I don't need those pages duplicated here. This is an instance of like really nice, like, when you're only given 22 pages at a time, there's a lot of, I imagine, science that goes into what am I using. Like Django and I often talk about, what is a square foot of our store worth? I think a comic book writer, an artist, has to think that same thing of like, what is a quarter of a page worth? And for him to say, well, I'm going to redo 2 full pages. But in this situation, I think it really helped because I redid that thing where I followed the smoke back to the bullet, and it brought me right back to that moment.
I'm actually looking at it, and it's almost 3 pages, the exact same.
And
this third is like slightly different. Like they get rid of the thing with him like reloading the gun at the top, but it's almost the exact same.
I wonder if that's not because he is setting up bottle episodes per issue. So you need like a pretty big base to really understand what's going on. But each issue seems to be like vignettes that play nice together and give you a full meal.
With those 3 pages that we're talking about there, what sprung to mind with me is that it felt like the beginning of a Joss Whedon TV episode or something. It felt like, because we need to put credit on the comedy timing of that you've got essentially what happened at the end of the last episode and was super dramatic and a cliffhanger and was super awesome and cool, then replayed at the beginning of the episode and you're familiar with it, but then you get the comedic beat of, oh, shots are coming back at him.
Different emotional punch.
Right, different emotional punch using the same tools, but then adding a twist.
Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder, but better.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah,
yeah. It felt like an instance of like, because as this was coming out, probably 7 months had gone by or something. That probably felt like when you opened this issue, like, oh damn, okay, cool, we're back to this moment, and like you don't mind spending 3 pages reinvesting in that moment. Whereas on the House and Powers stuff, it was like, okay, I did see that last week when this other one came out. I did pay $5 for this issue, and you just used 3 of the 24 pages I paid for, which I don't care about at all as someone who's going to buy the hardcover. But I also am always trying to be mindful of just like, what is your price per page? I always think about, as a reader who's on a budget, what are you paying per page, and what is a single page worth to someone?
Also, Hickman clearly has pages to burn in here, because he's got pages that are just white, and they're not even like 0 hour white. They're just.
Did you pee on it? There's a blank.
That's true. Is this one of your other read copies? Your copies that you read afterwards, or?
I think this really.
I mean, they do have 2 guys start beating on each other, so.
Yup.
It's a good 2-boy beat sequence in this. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I think what we're talking about reusing the same pages really brings up the question, what would Hickman do with Ryan North's dinosaur comics? But
I haven't read Ryan North's dinosaur comics. Wait,
it was his webcomic.
Oh, okay, yeah. I only know his stuff in
read that.
Squirrel Girl.
You can dip in and out of it. It's hilarious.
Okay, I love dinosaurs.
This is a page that he just keeps on hammering into us, and I don't know if it's like foreshadowing for the end of the world. Like, is that the nuclear explosion that's going to happen, or what?
But one of them had such a good joke on it. I forget what it was.
I thought that was a pretty good joke.
Yours are always good, Django. I'm just almost.
I think he was contrasting.
Yeah, but Hickman uses those blank pages in all of the stuff he does. There's yeah.
He's addicted to them.
Keep them coming.
The one thing I've noticed, and maybe it's in the volume 4 with the World Book or whatever it is comparing it again, since I've only read limited Hickman, comparing it to X-Men and House of X, there seems to be notably absent, and I did read Decorum actually in the first issue, but graphs and infographics and all of the stuff that I felt like were Hickman-isms like doesn't seem to exist in this. Is that just forthcoming?
In the world, baby.
Is that he just put it all in one spot?
Yep.
Yeah.
Instead of spreading it through all the books?
Yeah, and I think it was probably a conscious decision on his part to try to convey that information through plot and exposition rather than his.
Yeah, good on him for it.
I think it's much better that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the graphs and the charts and everything, but I kind of prefer to have somebody show me stuff rather than tell me stuff. And story shows me better. It sticks with me better too. Like I feel like this book already feels like I'm in school. And if it was full of charts and graphs also, I would feel a little bit like I was in school and had homework.
The instance that I loved is I think going into the final issue of this volume when the Beast is like kind of tearing himself out and the balloon's talking him through it. And the Beast says, tell me, what's really the difference between a hyper accurate simulation and reality itself? And the whole Hickman thing just says nothing. And it's just like, well, now you're just kind of telling jokes, Jay Hickey. Like
also foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Right? For when the balloon's lying to him.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, Hickman tell jokes.
He's so
and almond.
For a guy that seems so joyless, he has such a sense of humor that is prevalent in all of his work, I think.
Can I take us into a journey back into the first issue?
Yeah, time travel, but
hey, lucky for me, I've got the hardcover.
More and more people have this hardcover, everyone.
Hey, I'm not left out.
We've got 8 of them left at the store.
Well,
and no volume 3s. Out of nowhere, we realized that for some reason we had 100 copies of every volume except for 3. And we realized that the day that Will had ordered or maybe Mike or Will had ordered his. And we were like, oh God, this is the last one we have. Does everyone in the club have one? Okay, everyone in the club has one. All right, good. But yeah, it was scary.
I mean, if you want me to trade back in my
1.
paperbacks for a hardcover, I can do that.
Yeah.
If you'd rather do that, but Will, I want you to remember an hour ago when I told everyone about the $150 volume 2. If you want your books to look the same on the shelf,
can't collect these.
Issue 1, buddy.
Yeah, time travel. Issue 1.
Yeah. All right. So boom, issue 1. So there's one of these things that I'm just going to ask that I should already know for sure. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but you're going to help me explain. And the second one is just going over what's in Colonel Uncle's little box with the red. Is it the eyes that we've seen talking with that? So we're to assume that this is the eye, an eye. How many eyes talk like this? We still don't know why, obviously. Is this just the Oracle's other eye? Where are we at with that? What am I missing?
It is mentioned in the World one shot that it's the other eye of the Oracle.
Okay.
It is worth noting that the eyes do 2 different things, and I don't think that we've gotten a clear answer as to which eye is which.
Context for that yet then, without reading.
Like, I can make a wild guess at it, but I don't think that they've given us
Okay.
context to know which eye specifically is which. It's kind of a like one only tells lies, one only tells the truth
Right.
situation. Not exactly, but
And is that like following up on like Herculean myth, or sort of like the oracles that have 3 eyes and the hairs that can't be cut? I'm thinking back to Disney's Hercules movie, but I think it might be an actual, it's
Thinking
real
of the
myth stuff.
Gorgons?
Is that in Hercules?
That's the
I think you're thinking of the Fates.
The
Yeah.
Fates.
They have
I am
one eye
thinking
that
of
they
the Fates.
share.
Oh, that's totally what it is. Totally what it is. Yep. There we go. Never mind.
You're
Totally
thinking
different
of the
thing.
I didn't
Gungans,
recently
as usual.
rewatch Hercules or anything.
It's the best Disney film except for Goofy movie. But this isn't the forum for that. But yeah, no, those eyes, I love that, and I love the very slow payout of that. Justin and I started doing a whole new podcast thing that we're going to be doing, which is an issue by issue read of Grant Morrison's Batman run. But
I'm doing that.
yeah, as we were talking about that this morning, I kept thinking of East of West, which is, I can only think of like 2 people in all of comics that can so like tantrically and like sociopathically like slowly pay out a story. Like Morrison's Batman run, you're like, it's like 75 issues till like you just keep working towards an ending payoff. And Hickman is the same way, and I love it. It's just like, like the whole time you're just like, waiting for a payoff, and he just like, it's so almost sadistic of just like, like I think it's so masterfully done, and the eyes of the oracles are a great instance of that happening.
I like, when we were talking about Middle West last week, we talked a little bit about how there are a lot of characters who seem to be parallels for mythical stories. And this has that, but this has a totally different feel and a different way that they're being used.
Yeah.
Is there like a biblical Ezra that seems to fit this mold at all? Or is there like in mythology or anything? Because this Ezra, it seems like a name that would have been biblical, and he fits such a strong
Ezra's
archetype.
A prophet.
In this.
I don't know that he has anything that's super close to that.
I mean, this Ezra is not a prophet.
It is a prophet. I mean, by for sure by name, but I don't know if there's any other similarities to Bible.
Well, did the Ezra in the Bible ever eat the Bible? I guess is the question.
We have absolutely no proof that he didn't. I'm going to be sure of that.
We do not recommend you board the Bible.
Tastes bad. Well, that's another like that scene was a great like, what's going on? Is he eating that? Is he eating the message? Is there only one copy of the message? And then being like, is that giant white tentacled thing eating him, or is it like pulling him back to protect it? Like there was a lot of visual ambiguity in that.
It pulls him back in and then puts him on its back and rides off into this blood set.
Right. Well, we get the resolution of both of those questions when you see him on the thing's back, and you're getting what the message says about, it shall consume the message and be a vessel for the message stuff.
And we got so much more of the actual message in this. I think, I can't remember if it was Nathan or Will that was sort of talking about like last time of like, how much of the message have we heard?
Yeah.
And this time we got oodles of it.
And it was delicious.
Almost as good as the message itself.
I'm actually dying to know, has Roman read this, and what does he think of it?
Roman Lurkin love this guy. He's just here as a gift to me.
Yeah, because I'm that guy that shows up to book club never having read the book.
Well, it is volume 3. It's a perfect it's a perfect show up and hang out moment. Like, it's not like you showed up for volume 1 and didn't read it. Like,
I've only read half of volume 1, the soft cover.
The best part about Roman showing up here is that the position that he's sitting kind of leaned over like he's on a piano. That's the same position he would be in if you were all in a room together too.
And he's in a robe, right?
In a robe, yes.
Robeman.
It's all very, you're probably wondering why I invited you here.
One of you has eaten poison.
But Roman, what is like, as someone who, I mean, I guess 2 months ago I was the same position, like, East of West, you're in a group of people who have all had not been reading it, with the exception of Wynn, or I can't remember if Mike had read some of it, but that are now engaging in it. Like, do you have perception? Did it seem like a thing that you didn't want to read? Is it a thing that you started reading and bounced off of, or it was just a little bit too dense? Is it a thing that you plan to read one day?
Like, whose bomb do we have to eat to get you to read this?
Bong? Did you say
Bomb.
bong? Oh, okay. I thought so. I didn't know, though. It seemed like a weed thing.
Yeah, it did. It did. And that glass or clay, it's going to hurt your teeth. I do want to read it. I do want to read it. I mean, I started volume 1 of the trade, and it is really good. It does feel kind of like being in school, like Django said, because I started reading it late one night. I was like, okay, this is not the time to read this. But I definitely want to continue. I've always liked everything I've read of Hickman, so I know I'll like this. What is kind of interesting that I've maybe picked up on, I'm reading Scout, the old Timothy Truman series from the mid 80s, which is about a dystopian future in America, and it's a Western but with science fiction elements. And this scout, this Apache, comes down riding out of the hills on his motorcycle and has to go fight mythological monsters. And Timothy Truman did a lot of studying of Native American mythology, so that's really heavy in it. And I can't help but wonder from this conversation if Hickman, he probably read Scout. I wonder if he had what inspiration, if any, he had from Scout, because this feels like it's like, I don't know how many years later, but it's like could be in that Scout universe. It's just like 50 years after Scout or something.
Scout is like almost the Mad Max version of this, and this is more like Star Wars to me.
Yeah, that's a good summation. Yeah,
but that raises an interesting point, which is that I think that he maybe almost intentionally does obfuscate what the things that are influencing his work seem to be, because I am like kind of a devotee of his, and the only known thing I can think of that he was a big fan of was I was once sitting in on a conversation that he was having with someone, and he was talking about the first book, Leviathan Wakes, in the Expanse series of books by Edward James Corey, or anyway,
almost. Dang it,
that's Battlestar Galactica. But he's sort of talking about how great he thought this book Leviathan Wakes was, and he must have been saying that right around the time East of West started, is actually I think the time frame. And what he said he loved so much about that book is that it's like a hard sci-fi book that as you're reading it, about 2/3 of the way through, there's a status quo, and then something happens that like sort of redefines and reshifts everything that you've read before it and everything moving onward. And I've always wanted to read that book, except I am just doomed to only read books that have pictures.
It has a really, really good audiobook if you do audiobooks at all.
You know what, Wynn? I bought it like 2 weeks ago, and I haven't started it yet because I started
like reading it.
I started while playing a video game, and then I realized I was 20 minutes in, and I was like, I haven't listened to anything they said, so I got to stop and actually do this when I'm listening to it. But that mechanism with which she was so impressed of, I was reading it and it was fine, and then a thing happened that switched everything, and I was going forward, and then it turns out I was going this way. That's almost like that is almost the definition of Hickman to me. At this, where it's sort of like he sets up a status quo, he leaves something dangling in front of you that you think is asinine, and until you stop paying attention to it, and then he tricks you and makes you think that was the most important thing that you just weren't paying attention to, and now everything is different. So yeah, I don't know about Scout or anything, because I do think that he almost keeps that stuff secret as a way of, although he did read all of Fantastic Four going into Fantastic Four, so
yeah.
That's a lot of reading.
Yeah.
That's a lot of 90s.
Yeah, I'm suddenly being reminded of the book he was going to put out, Frontier, that he ended up canceling after soliciting 2 issues and saying like it needed reworked. Like you mentioning like the Expanse thing just reminded me of that. And I remember they sent out like the preview of issue 1. I was like, oh, this is good. And then the email came out saying, I've decided that it's not ready yet. I'm like, no, I want to know what you're doing with this. It was so interesting.
I bet he got waist deep in the X-Men stuff and just had to stop because he didn't have time.
It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. So we've been going for about an hour. What do we have sort of finishing thoughts? Anybody want to proffer any theories about things moving forward? I know that Win has read more. Mike excitedly got number 4. He's read it. I'm like, if I could get that $150 stupid hardcover volume 2, I would be there. I'm gonna have to switch to paperbacks until I can find a volume 2. But I'm curious sort of where people are at, or final thoughts, or things moving forward.
I looked up a little bit about Ezra.
Okay. The Prophet, or in the book?
Prophet Ezra wrote Chronicles, a couple other things. According to the Babylonian Talmud, which is a Jewish text, so Babylon, there's some relation here. Ezra the scribe, said to have enacted 10 standing laws and orders, and I'll read number 10 to you. That men who may have suffered a seminal emission, especially after accompanying with their wives, be required to immerse themselves in a ritual bath before reading the scroll of the law.
Well, you gotta clean up, bud.
You gotta clean up after those seminal emissions. And I'm sure Ezra, while he was inside of the monster, was thinking about that.
I gotta take a bath. I gotta take a shower.
Is the monster actually? When you look at the design, it's white.
That's true. That's true. It has an almost tadpole-like.
This episode has just been such filth. I love it.
Well, we worked through volume 1 and 2. We worked, everyone, and now it's volume 3, and it was like
this was just making sweet, sweet love with all that plot.
Exactly. There was like a lot of payoff, if you will, in this volume, and
not a payload.
Whoa.
No.
Whoa. Your words, not mine. I watched the Netflix series Waco this week, but what was so interesting to me was the amount of talk of Babylon and the way that in David Koresh's interpretation of the Book of Revelations, Babylon served a certain role. And as I was reading this, I got so excited that the term Babylon was coming up, and not only that, but that the beast took the name Babylon. In terms of its biblical role in Revelation, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, he'll use it for sure. You know it.
Yeah, can't wait.
Relation. In all seriousness, I do have a favorite panel of this too. That that panel I loved so much. It's pretty simple, but I dug it, and I also love his use of like anime lines. And I don't know if he has any roots in any anime at all, or I'm sure he just liked it like everyone else. And I thought that was pretty fun. A lot of his dynamic, the way he makes you feel movement are those anime lines.
I think somebody else brought it up earlier, but I do think that there's a pretty strong manga anime influence in Dragata's art, even just like down to the art or the eyes. Maybe it was Mike, but there's a very anime feel to the facial structure. But I remember when I got into comics, stopped being into comics, got really into anime and manga and all the drawing books, the how to draw manga, like the proportion of face that goes to eye is much larger in anime and manga than it is in Western comics. The amount of space in the head that an eye takes up. And Dragata, if you look at his work in here, the proportion of, I guess when the younger kids have, like the Beast, or even the Horseman of the Apocalypse, they have enormous eyes. The adults seem to have smaller ones, but there seems to be an influence there that I think is interesting, because it's not like, other artists where it's like clearly manga influence, like Humberto Ramos or something at Marvel. It's a little bit more subtle, but it seems to be there.
So, Jeff, did we decide what we're talking about next week in the book club?
Ice Cream Man. It's Ice Cream Man.
Ice Cream Man Volume 1.
Mike, have you read any Ice Cream Man?
No, I've heard good things about it.
I think that you would like Ice Cream Man.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself.
It's like Black Mirror or Twilight Zone for comic books, with an artist who has art that is gorgeous and unlike any kind of mainstream art, and a writer who this is their first really big breakout thing, and it's been so cool to watch. They've been releasing digital comics online while comics have been shut down, and love these creators.
And speaking of bottle episodes, every single issue is its own story, and they build in really subtle ways.
Yeah,
I think that's what I'd come across, and that it's perhaps quite meta in its kind of analysis of the medium and all this kind of stuff, and I like a bit of that.
It's like nothing else. It feels like there's no way that somebody could not like it unless they were just overtly offended by the content somehow.
Yeah.
It's such a cool little subgenre.
I don't know how long I'm going to be able to wait to, read and talk about East of West Volume 4, though.
Listen, you son of a bitch. I was halfway through Volume 3 when we decided to do this, so I had to put that on pause. You can wait a week and a half. I know you can.
It's okay. First and foremost, it's 2.5 weeks because 1 week from now would be Ice Cream Man. A week after that would be East of West. Well, so it's 2 weeks. I'm just really jonesing for
no one is saying that you can't just go and read it as soon as we're done.
I forget things if
Have
I
you ever
wait
read
days.
comics, with like the timing of them?
Yeah. I'm used to only having to wait a week between new comics. That's my thing. And now
because of X-Men once?
No. I mean, sorry, just like every week boxes show up. Yeah. Okay, well, if everyone can wait 2 weeks for East of West, I guess I can wait 2 weeks of East of West. But
perhaps just to round off and to clarify and plug for everyone else, Diamond is redistributing now. Is that correct? And what sort of stuff is coming out now? Just to refresh
Diamond
everyone's.
Expects to send stuff out on May 20th is the expected date. They have been a little bit slushy about that, but that's their target. My guess is that if it's not May 20th, it'll be the weekend or the Wednesday after that.
The DC stuff will definitely be there May 20th.
I saw that somebody asked a question for the podcast that you'll probably put up sooner than later, and I'll answer the question. Where do you guys fall on the 4-phase opening schedule?
We'll probably be running a little bit behind on it. Kind of like we closed a few days before we had to close and pulled other things back a little bit early. Our plan right now, and everything's always up in the air at this point, but our plan right now is to probably move a little bit slower than we're allowed to, and just prefer safety. Right now, the store's operating in a way that pays the bills, and we're not.
The bills, we're making the bills,
killing it.
And so, thank you, folks, especially who are placing orders, and that's incredible. The fact that we have the ability to wait maybe an extra week to give other businesses who need it more some time and space. Is just that's a gift that you all are giving us. So thank you very much.
It's going to be a puzzle, and we definitely did answer it on the Perfectly Acceptable podcast. It'll go up pretty soon.
Probably tomorrow.
Having
a book club on the day that I used to edit the podcast and put it up means the podcast is behind it. I'm also working on other podcasts now. So there shouldn't be a shortage of media. There's just Jeff needs to
Shame, Jeff. Shame.
I gotta get my days.
I'm all for it. That means that I get to listen to it on my Monday. Which Jeff, indeed.
There was a lot of Jeffs last time. There's at this point, it's 4 different days of the week I'll be recording something.
Are you putting yourself into things that you're not going to be able to maintain once the shop opens back up in some semblance?
100%.
If a daily podcast going through a 75 issue run, 1 issue a day is that, then absolutely I am.
We're going to wait for Jeff's podcast to wrap up before we
open the store. So 75 weeks after it comes out. We recorded the 2nd episode today, but given the format of it, I'm trying to get some in the can before we put it out.
Podcast can just be padded out by you stopping to serve customers. It's just part of the podcast.
Yeah, if I weren't also then neurotically worried about people abandoning it entirely because it was 2 days late, then I would. But instead, I'm like, no, I'm a day late. I can't sleep. I'm just going to feel guilt and shame until I get this out.
None of us can operate a page-a-day calendar. That's for adults. We have no idea what days your stuff come out.
The big problem is that I can't. In quarantine, it takes me 35 seconds to figure out what day it is any day of the week. What was the last thing?
We've repeatedly talked about getting one of those retirement clocks that points at what day of the week it is.
Yes.
Need it. But All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much once again. I love getting to talk to you all. And this was the first one where I was just like, I cannot wait to just get some feedback because like, I don't feel like I have to do work. It's now just interpretation. And I want to hear everyone's interpretation. So this was a blast. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you guys for running it.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We'll see you all next week for Ice Cream Man. Hopefully, if not, we love you. We understand. We'll see you for East to West Volume.
Oh, real quick, Matt Goff says hi. It's Andrea's birthday today, so he is hanging out with his beautiful
Happy
wife.
birthday, Andrea. Hello, Merlin. Hello, Matt Goff. See you, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.